Okay, this module we're going to cover the final hazards for aviation. Uh, there are a number of them here, but we'll kind of hit the highlights on several, but I might go into depth on a few of them here. Lightning obviously is a hazard. Anytime you get near a thunderstorm, you have the potential of having lightning. However, aircraft really don't create any kind of charges within the atmosphere that make them vulnerable to lightning. It's more, are you unlucky enough to hit an area where lightning happens to be coming down through, in which case you're going to have all kinds of problems on your aircraft. But remember that lightning can go out pretty far from under an anvil. You don't want to fly there. And also, there are potentials for lightning fairly far out from a thunderstorm. One of the nice features the new GOES 16 spacecraft has is lightning data that it covers the entire Western Hemisphere for every 5 minutes. Some of these products are already online. You can actually pick them up, and I'm sure that the meteorologists that serve you have access to this lightning data across the country. But one of the things about it that's so nice with getting every 5-minute data, you get all kinds of strokes. It used to be you only got cloud to ground lightning, but now you get cloud to cloud lightning as well, which may be what's occurring underneath an anvil sometimes and all. So there's some interesting things there with lightning. One of the other things is volcanic ash, a hazard. No aircraft wants to fly into volcanic ash. And anytime a volcano erupts and throws dust up into all the way up into the stratosphere, it's going to create a cloud that's going to move with the flow of tiny particles of dust. And if you think about it, your aircraft isn't going to exactly enjoy flying through that dust. So they try to avoid it. They keep you away from those areas, obviously. Space weather. Strong solar storms can impact the GPS systems. It can impact communication and navigation. The National Weather Service, believe it or not, actually has a space weather center in Boulder, Colorado, that actually creates forecast of the potential for solar storms. So you have some options if you're so inclined to look at there. Runway hazards can take numerous forms. You can get hydroplaning or snow on the runway, ice on the runway. And up in Alaska, you get things like ice fog. And you actually can get it down in the northern 48 states as well, just mainly in the northern part of the areas. And temperatures generally are running about -10 or below to get ice fog. Another set of hazards for you to look into would be icing. Obviously, there's all kind of icings. There's structural icing, carburetor icing. Anytime there's icing forms of deposit on your aircraft, it's going to affect your performance. So the carburetor icing, think about it. We've learned that as air expands, it cools. Well, that same principle is holding through in your carburetor. And that's why, if you have a lot of moisture there and air is being expanded greatly, you can even have temperatures as high as 80 degrees, dew points in the 70s, and still get carburetor icing. Now, I know a lot of aircraft are equipped with de-icers and handle that kind of thing, but just something to be aware of here as you're going along. Liquid content of water. Think about it if you have a lot of moisture in the air and you start getting rain that's below freezing, the supercooled water droplets. The more the moisture, the better chance your aircraft is going to pick up severe icing. So that's something to be aware of. Sometimes you can only get very light precipitation out of the weather, and sometimes, however, there's lots of moisture coming in and really can impact all the precipitation that's falling. And if you're in that range, we talked about it, from 0 to -10 degrees Celsius, if you're flying in that temperature range, a lot of that precipitation, if it hasn't become snow already, could be in the form of supercooled water, and you could be dealing with icing in those areas. The final group is instrument meteorology, instrument flight rules. We know all the categories, VFR, greater than 3,000, visibility greater than 5 miles. MVFR is 1 to 3, and or visibility 3 to 5, and then IFR, 500 or less than 1,000, and basically visibility 1 to less than 3 miles, and then LIFR as well. So some of the things about what causes low ceilings and low visibilities. Most airports now have either ASOS. Ones your major airports you're flying into will have ASOS. Some smaller airports have AWOS. Basically, AWOS, the difference is not so much in the instrumentation anymore. It's who maintains them. The National Weather Service maintains all ASOSs across the country, and they are required literally every quarter to go out, calibrate them, check them out, make sure they're okay, and they have a less than a 24-hour window to go out to an airport and begin repairs on one. Where a WAS, it could be weeks or months until they get repaired sometimes. We talked about fog before, and fog can form in lots of different ways. Radiation fog, but one of the other things that's kind of interesting is advection fog. When I went to Florida State, I attended a local high school football game one day, and we had a very strong southerly wind off the Gulf of Mexico, and it was bringing in an advection fog. And as the game progressed, visibility kept going lower and lower. What was happening is the fog was forming over that relatively warm Gulf of Mexico. There was cooler air getting down there, and as that fog was coming back into land, it was just pushing in and just kept getting denser and denser. By the end of the game, you could hardly see across the stands. Well, these are just some of the categories and things we're going to talk about right now. So let's just look at a little bit of this stuff. So currently on the weather map, we have low pressure over Colorado, over Texas Panhandle. And there's high pressure building down out of Canada here. So with that, let's take a look at where this thing is going to develop and how's it going to do here a little bit. So one of the nice things with the forecast here is I can go do day 1 to 2, and by tonight, it's not a real strong low, but that high, man, it's a 1042 high up in Canada. That's pretty powerful. So it's pushing down, building down in this area. A little bit later, 1044 high. So it's actually building even stronger. That front, it was back in a little bit further west in Oklahoma. By tomorrow morning, it's over eastern Oklahoma, all because of that strong, very strong high pushing down. It isn't like there's a big low coming out here, but there's a tremendous high pushing down. So that snow that's occurring now back in Colorado drifts southeast, actually gets over central Oklahoma. And then it really takes off. You'll see low pressure begins to develop over the Gulf of Mexico here and that low begins to move up the coast, all the way up as a very powerful low, relatively 10,000 millibars, all the way up by Tuesday night, even some snow back in coming off the Great Lakes and all. So looking at some soundings today, you can actually pick out some interesting things. Say if you're flying out there right now, went to Dodge City, well, let's take a look at Amarillo actually. You can find a cold front. Guess where? Only a little bit above 800 millibars, a little bit above 3,000, about 5,000 feet up. So if you were taking off at Amarillo, boy, you'd be really seeing temperatures going up. But look how cold it is, right almost down to freezing already. Look at Denver, where it's actually been snowing some. You can see temperatures are below freezing everywhere throughout this whole sounding. So you're not getting any icing as such. You're getting all kinds of snow, however, but not getting icing out of that. Now, bring it a little bit further east. You can see a cold front has gone through Oklahoma City, but it's very shallow, down the lowest 1,000 feet probably. And right now, anyways, you only have clouds that are just a little bit above. They're above freezing, also right now. But these are all things you could look at on soundings or whatever and determine where these clouds are, where the icing might be occurring. Oh, yeah, and also where your ceilings might be. So looking a little bit at the Storm Prediction Center right now, I thought I would just show quickly. Here's a low at about 2,000, 3,000 feet up. You can see warm air getting pushed up out of the Gulf of Mexico over top the cold air that's up in here that's being pushed down by that monster high that we saw. If you go out a little bit further, a little bit higher loft, there is tremendous jet up here. That's helping that high to build, but also it's going to trigger a trough of low pressure down here. I mean, you're looking at 150, 195 knots of wind up in here. So that, and temperatures around minus 68, that is some very cold air, very powerful trough digging into the western part of the U.S. And it's going to be generating a lot of strong winds to the east, and that's what's going to trigger that low developing eventually. We can look also a little bit current weather, and you can see here the temperatures 850. Notice how the temperature, it's all going below freezing pretty quickly. So it's all pretty much snow out here, even on the Rockies. One of the things too is Aviation Weather Center gives you the ceiling visibility chart. You can see here the ranges talking about the mountains might be obscured. You can click on one, get a quick reading on what's happening here. A little bit of light snow. One of the things to remember is snow is bigger than raindrops. So if you have moderate snow falling, you got to have visibility getting down to around half a mile. That's just the first thing. That doesn't take a lot to get moderate rain. You think about, you might have 2-3 mile visibility. But if you have moderate snow, your visibility is going to be coming down to about a half a mile. So it's just something to know. And you can see here 1 3/4, but a few clouds relatively low here. So you have IFR conditions at this airport. So just looking at satellite picture too, sometimes looking at GOES can help you pinpoint. You can see all the moisture coming up out of the Gulf of Mexico and spiraling into this low that's out here. There's also some lower clouds over Georgia here and right along the East Coast. Well, if you look back at what we were looking here at WPC at the surface map, you got east wind coming off the Atlantic. It's pulling in this moisture at the relatively low levels and bringing it in down here. So that's what's bringing your clouds, lower ceilings, possibly MVFR conditions, maybe even some IFR in lower clouds. One other thing I wanted to show you with this. So we'll go look at some buff kit stuff here. I just wanted to depict to you, here comes Norfolk. Norfolk is going to get this low, but it's going to be way late in the day on into Tuesday. So here you can see clouds, high clouds are beginning to come in Monday morning. And it's actually showing some lower clouds coming in. There's got southeast winds here off the water. Notice how the winds shift. So we talked about wind shear, boy, southeast to southwest. Pretty good wind shift right there. Oh yeah, and a pretty strong jet up here, probably plenty of turbulence again. So by later in the day, Monday evening, look at this, a whole deck of clouds now we have here. That's that warm air coming up from the south, overrunning that cold air that's here, and models actually show precip beginning to develop. Oh yeah, but there's no real low ceilings yet. But now it's got to take a little bit to get down there, but all of a sudden you're starting to see some real low ceilings developing down in here. And this would be Monday night late. And really brings a lot of precip up here by Tuesday morning, and very, very low ceilings. I could pull this down, but you're getting ceilings that are down or probably below 500 feet at that time. So you can actually see a depiction of how these IFR conditions developed. And if I looked at it here in the forecast, well, I can just look at cloud bases, for example. And you can see, they're running along 2,000, over 5,000. The model's trying to think things through, not necessarily the smartest, but, all of a sudden it's showing IFR conditions, developing Monday evening and continuing literally most of the day on Tuesday. So you can see you got that issue. Oh yeah, you want to look at visibility at the same time. We're rain here, but you can see there's some really low visibilities at times too, down to a quarter, particularly on Tuesday when the heavier precip is falling. So it looks like a lousy day here Tuesday at this time. So this is some of just what you can look at out there that's available to you, and you can take advantage of it. You can see as this low is developing where you might anticipate really bad, yucky weather. So, like I say, as this low moves out, you can see the lower ceilings developing down in here, particularly as the heavier snowfall impacts it. You might have some mixed precipitation initially in some of these areas. So you got to watch where you're flying for icing conditions in that area as you're moving along. And then as the low actually kicks off, starts moving north, you can see a lot of moisture coming in off at this, pushed up, probably warm air advection. Clouds are lowering. And so the time to finally get the low up here. And then you're going to get the lake effect, maybe some really good lake effect snows over Lake Erie, bringing the lower ceilings into that area as well. So you can see the whole gambit here, looking at this across the country right now, and the hazards you're dealing with here.